Alright guys, it's finally time for me to get to that Jackery review that I've been promising. I meant to have it done last week. There's a long range of reasons why that didn't happen, but now I'm just going to show it to you. So I basically had the Jackery running as most of my power source while I was at a campsite for a few days. And basically that's what this Jackery has become. I did try it running my fridge, but there were some limitations to that, which I'll get into as I kind of review those days with the Jackery. By the way, most useless feature ever. This stupid little light. Like, this thing is huge. I'm not walking around using it as a flashlight. And the way that it's positioned on the Jackery, like, I wouldn't even use it as a campsite table light. If there was more like a lantern thing sort of on it, then maybe it would be useful. But this is like the most useless add-on feature that ever was. Since I didn't cover that otherwise, I kept looking at it and thinking how stupid it was. But I didn't talk about it in anything I filmed while I was using it at the campsite. But literally, I keep forgetting that light is there, and it's absolutely useless on a unit this size. It makes sense on smaller units, but on something this size, like, I'm not going to be walking around using it as a flashlight. It would be much more useful if there was some sort of lantern light on it, something that you could use while sitting down, something you can use to brighten up your area while you're sitting there. Like, if the sun starts to go down and I'm still sitting here, that little flashlight feature isn't going to do me much. I mean, it'll be helpful, but it would be more helpful if there was more of a lantern sort of light to it. But that's unimportant. Let's go ahead and look at some of the footage from when I used the Jackery at a campsite. So I found a campsite where I can stay. Unfortunately, it's like 12:51 and I have not set up the Jackery to take over most of my power needs. Now, I want to state again that this is I'm not truly transitioning my van to running off the Jackery. What I want to know is, for my power needs, could the Jackery run my life? Now, as I said, there's a couple of things that it would be way too difficult to unwire just so I could get them to run off the Jackery. And I would have wired them completely different if the Jackery was my primary power source from the beginning. So what I'm basically doing is I'm hooking up my refrigerator to the Jackery. I'm going to set out the panels. I haven't figured out where, so that they're catching as much sun during the day as possible. And again, I'm doing this to imitate the system in the van as much as possible so that I can say, hey, for actual use, like, if you want like numbers and specifications and watt meters and all of that stuff, I advise you to go check out a Will Pros or a Hobotech. They do a really excellent job with that, and I don't even want to get in their zone because I ain't got that kind of like brain power. For me, it's always come down to a practical thing. For example, when people used to always say a battery, just buying an actual car battery, lithium battery, whatever, is cheaper than a lot of these power stations, there's a couple of steps they're missing. One, some people, I don't care what you say, I know you think everybody can do it. Some people do. Some people are just not built to understand wiring, and they can't afford to pay somebody to do an electric system for them. So right there in the middle between, not having enough money to pay an electrician and not having sort of the technical skills to wire a van, is the power station. Now, it's a little more of an expensive buy-in sometimes than people want, but it allows them just to get something that's already ready to go. Like, they don't have to think about it, how it works, any of that. And then on the other end, it doesn't require them putting in the expense of paying for an expert. And usually they would have to pay for that expert on top of buying the supplies, either through the expert or before going to the expert. And so in the middle, there's the power station. And the power station is this all-in-one solution where there's only one step. Hook it up to whatever's going to charge it. In the case of the Jackery, it could be a solar panel. It could be your car, the 12-volt power in your car. or any 12-volt source, to be honest, or a 110 source. I don't know why Jackery says on the box that a generator is a separate source. When you hook it up to the generator, in most cases, you're probably charging off of the 110. So you're doing the same thing you would do if you were charging it off of a house or an inverter. So it's like 4 ways to charge. Please, Jackery. That one was a little, that was a little much. You wanted to throw in that extra option there, which isn't realistic. So first, let's hook it up. So I've unplugged my fridge. As you can see, there's absolutely no lights here, no indicators, no temperature gauge. It's only been unplugged for like 2 minutes. And so we're going to come up here to where the Jackery is. And the Jackery is at 76% power. Now I could just plug into the inverter because I do have a separate cable, but I'm not going to dig that out right now. And so we're just going to put it back on the same power it's always been on. Now, as you can see, there's no light here on DC. And so there's no input and there's no output because it's not getting any power from anywhere, and it doesn't have any power going anywhere. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and turn this on. So now the light's on. And there must be a delay because there's no way this fridge is like pulling nothing. And let's sit here for a second. Okay. So this is a Dometic fridge, which it's very efficient, and honestly it was already cold, so it wasn't like it was trying to bring itself back up to temp. Right this second it is pulling 2 watts, which is damn near nothing. But it's going to be pulling that continuous, and we are going to be using the Jackery for other things during the day. The other thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and put the solar panel, just one, in the windshield because I only think one is going to fit. But the thing about the Jackery solar panels is they are not waterproof. So I've been asked a lot about like mounting these panels. Like, could you just mount it to your roof? Could you just get the Jackery panel and mount it to your roof? Temporarily, yes. I would never advise doing it permanently. Now, the panel does have grommets on the side of it, and so it is hangable. You don't have to sit it on the ground. Obviously, if you have nothing on your roof, I have panels on my roof, and I have a cargo carrier, and my roof is full. But if your roof was not full, yeah, you could actually lay it up there, drop the cable down, and like snake it through a window or something. And that will work just fine. I have stuff on my roof, so that's not going to work for me. You can also lay it on the windshield. You can do all kinds of things if it fits, depending on your situation, the size of your windshield, the size of your rig, where you have space to lay things. But it is not meant to be a permanently mounted all-weather panel. And I think that's important. So like right now, it rained all of a sudden. If I just had those laying out, they might survive the rain. Like it's not storming and like, crazy, but there's water falling from the sky. And these are not waterproof panels. They are for like nothing's happening stuff on, which is funny because a lot of these foldable panels are actually more expensive than like panels that can sit out in the rain and the sun and all that. And that's because of the other stuff. Like it's already wired for the Jackery. It has a little charging port in it so you can use it independent of the Jackery and all those things, which the panels on the roof do not. They're just panels. They're just there to transmit energy from the sun to whatever device needs the energy. And so in that way, they're weaker panels, but it depends on your van life situation, on your travel situation. Like obviously the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day, but I can almost guess that it's gonna be fine. But again, if it wasn't fine, if for some reason you got your Jackery down to like 15% and your fridge was like really warm, and so it really needed to pull power to really heat up in the first place, and this is the value of compressor fridges. Like once they're cold, they don't take a lot of effort to stay cold, especially a quality compressor fridge. So that'll be good. But if for some reason you're like at the end of your rope with power, you can't put these panels out in the weather. And I'm not going to test it by throwing it out there because it might, like I said, it's not like thunderstorming, pouring down, cats and dogs. It's just raining. Like, I could go out and walk right now and it wouldn't be a big deal. And so, like, that might not, that sort of lessens the appeal of the panels to me. Like, I personally value the Jackery more than the panels because the Jackery is like an enclosed battery that takes away a lot of cost. The panels, they're rather expensive, and they're not weatherproof. Like, you can't use them in the rain, so like that's problematic. The battery itself, from what I hear, is a great system. Again, I'm taking most of this from third parties. But like, yeah, it's a nice little solid battery here. But the Jackery panels and how difficult it is for newbies to make any other choice in panels is one of the downfalls of the Jackery for me. Because a lot of newbies won't know how to rig regular panels to a Jackery. And the biggest appeal of the Jackery to a newbie is all the steps it eliminates in them having to build their own system. Except for that one step where they have to even know what an Anderson power pole connector is or an 8mm plug is and know how to find the right cable to sort of get between a solar panel, a general solar panel that they would mount to their vehicle, and to the Jackery. And so on one hand, it's defeating the learning curve. On the other hand, it's kind of destroying it. But overall, I think it's something most people can figure out. Like, if you're building a whole solar system, you got to figure out inverters and fuse boxes and all this other stuff. If you were just trying to get a solar panel to connect to a Jackery, all you have to figure out is how to buy or make your own cable to do so. Okay, so the results of putting a solar panel in the window are so pitiful. Like, I'd be getting a better charge off of 12 volt with the car turned on right now. But I'm also at 76%, so I don't care. If this trickle charge just keeps me evened out, that'll be great. This is the kind of practical stuff I like to test. Now, I already know putting a solar panel in the window reduces its efficiency. The solar panel does much better when exposed to the sun, but this is one of those situations where it's like, is something better than nothing? And I think it is, so we're going to just let this roll all day. Look at this. We even get 10 watts sometimes. Ha. So the Jackery's been going for quite a few hours. I'm getting a so-so charge from one panel sitting in the windshield. And I know a lot of people like to promote putting your solar panel under the windshield, but underneath is not as good as on top, and that's not as good as just the prime position for the solar panel in general. So honestly, like, if you're in an urban situation, I just don't think the Jackery panels are the best choice because it's not easy to find places to just pop them on the ground. Unless you have a setup like that where it would work for you. But in most cases, I would say get an adapter, get roof mounted panels. Like, don't bother with the Jackery panel because the amount of wattage I'm getting is so insignificant. If this was your only power source, it would last you a few days, but it wouldn't be a good long-term solution to keeping your Jackery powered. Now, mind you, you could also charge it by driving, which would be far more efficient, and I will demonstrate sort of what the different power inputs do later on in this video. But right now, I just want to talk about the fact I started at 76% today. I'm only at 70. Now, right now, I have the fridge in here. This is a power bank. It's a small power bank. It's one of my travel pocket power banks. This is more likely what I'm going to carry with me if all I need to charge is a cell phone or anything that charges by USB. So right now I'm charging that from the Jackery. It wasn't fully empty. I have my laptop tablet device charging on its 110 plug just because this is a quick charge plug, and also it seems to prefer this over anybody's quick charge, including the Jackery's. So we have that plugged into AC power charging this device, and then we have our cell phone on this white cord that is going into here. I could have done a type C to type C, but the white cord was the one that was in front of me first, so that was the one I used. So right now, the Jackery is pulling 32 watts, and that is with the fridge plugged up. But honestly, I have a highly efficient fridge, and this isn't a very hot day. So the fridge isn't putting a lot of demand on the Jackery. I'm going to do the best I can with this review just to kind of get my initial experience with this device. But I feel like I need some more severe conditions that would really put this device to the test to really give like a full review. But this is how it's doing so far. Honestly, it's like getting on into the evening. Yes, I'm getting a weak charge from the solar panel, but the Jackery itself has so much power that I have all kinds of things charging right now, and I'm only at 70% as we get into evening, into nighttime. So it pretty much stopped raining. So I put both panels outside, but I don't really expect to get much sun right now. With both panels out under these conditions, I'm not even getting anything worth talking about. But I've had this thing going all day, running my fridge, and been rotating out different charging devices, and I am only at 63%, which is kind of impressive. Considering I've been running the fridge completely off this thing and just randomly sticking in things to charge in different spots. So, doing pretty good for a rainy day where I couldn't do a real test. So, good morning. I'm about to throw the panels back onto the Jackery. I've had the Jackery sitting in the front seat running the fridge all night, and it's only at 50%. So I'm going to throw the panels out, see what those are picking up. My house solar system, which got also, wasn't doing very well yesterday because it was rainy, it was overcast, there wasn't a lot of sun. This morning, it's clicking back up to like 80%, and the day has barely started. Now, the good thing about a roof solar system, like if you hook your Jackery to it, is that you don't have to think about it. As soon as it starts getting sun, it starts feeding your power system. And that's what's going on with my house battery right now. And you could set that up for a Jackery. This is where the Jackery panels are actually a disadvantage because, yeah, you can move them around and all this other stuff, but you also have to go out and set them up. Like, they aren't just already there, already working the second that sun is available. And because they aren't waterproof, weatherproof, good panels for like sitting out all the time, when I knew there was rain and the possibility of rain today, I didn't want to leave them out overnight, even though I was at a campsite. So one, I'm probably never going to pull these panels out, in a parking lot or like, when I'm traveling other ways to get the Jackery topped off. And I have to like consciously wake up and think about putting them out before they can start doing their work. And so that's sort of the disadvantage of the foldable panels. Not saying there won't be uses for them, there probably will, but that's sort of the disadvantages of the panels, sort of as a separate thing from the Jackery. There are other ways I could charge the Jackery, like through the car or off the inverter of the van's house system. But for this particular test, so we're doing a test of the 2 panels versus, the 3 panels on the roof, as far as actually just running stuff and keeping things running in the van. So we're going to get to that. this morning. We are currently pulling in the 40-ish area of watts, which means we would be getting about 20 some watts per panel right now. It's not perfect conditions, but obviously it's better than yesterday where I barely was getting like 1 to 2 from the windshield. I still think windshield charging is not ideal. I mean, it's just not ideal. If you have to charge that way, you're probably better off charging with the car running. But we're going to run the solar panel test all day and let this thing eat up as much power as it can. Like I said, it has been running the fridge consistently since yesterday, and it's only at 53%. Now, my Dometic is actually really efficient, so I don't know that this is the best gauge of power use. But even still, here we go. So I'm just getting nothing worthy from these solar panels. So I've plugged into my inverter, especially since I'm at a good point in the day. And so pulling off the inverter, this is just using the regular little plug, the 110 plug. I am pulling 160 to 158 watts. So honestly, the best way to charge this thing, in my opinion, is if you don't have a solar system set up like I do, is to plug this into a cigarette light inverter while you're driving down the road. Do not use the 12 volt. Buy like at least a 200 watt cigarette light inverter and just plug it into your car inverter, because I feel like that would work better. Like I said, I'm pulling off of my solar system inverter right now to charge this, just because I want to get it up enough that I can do some experiments with it with something that pulls a lot of energy. Alright, the panels really did a good job this morning. I got up to 100% while charging my phone, watching a Van City Vanlife live stream, and charging my little action camera as well. So I'm poor, so I didn't get a GoPro. I got this Akaso EK7000 back when I was in Oregon, and so I've been using it. As you can tell, it's very beat up. You guys have seen, I use this primarily to record my exercise videos. I use it for a lot of other stuff too. It does not have image stabilization, which makes it hard to use for action shots. But for still shots and just having a tiny camera to set up and getting a nice wide frame, it's done pretty good. Akaso also has other action cameras that do have image stabilization, but this has been my primary scenery capture camera. Sometimes I mount it in the car, so some of my driving shots are actually this camera, because this little case it's in has a top and a bottom screw. But saying this was getting charged, my cell phone was getting charged, my extra cell phone, my old cell phone that I use for capturing, I don't know how bad you can see the screen is cracked, but this is like my old cell phone. I also use this as an extra camera sometimes when I need my actual cell phone in my hand. Had all that charging along with this laptop on the Jackery while the panels were out, and got up to 100%. So the thing about panels though is panels are very dependent on conditions. Like the other 2 days where it was like it rained a little bit today, which is why I disconnected the panels, but I was already up to 100% at that point. Is panels are very weather sensitive. So, you know, a couple days ago it was raining really bad, so I tried sticking one of the panels up in the windshield and just letting one panel charge it from the inside of the van. And it was a middling charge. It was like a couple of watts. But actually, you know, I ran the fridge on this thing for like 2 days with hardly any solar power at 75%, and it was able to run the fridge and keep all my electronics charged. So today we're going to do some fun stuff. We're at 100%, and we're going to run some stuff that really uses some power and see, how many things can we charge on the Jackery and use with the Jackery while using some really high power drains. Honestly, the fridge was already cold. It was pulling not that many watts, but I'm 100% confident, like, if this was my main power source, if I did not have my batteries and my solar panel and all that already in the van, this, even if it had gotten bad solar for a couple of days, it still would have ran the fridge. I wouldn't have had to turn off the fridge. And I still could have, charged all my devices and probably ran my lights, because my lights, they pull like 5 watts. I only really turn them on at night. I'm not really using them during the day. And it's really just to see at night until I'm ready to go to bed. So, absolutely, if your Jackery 1000 was your primary power station, and let's say you don't have any crazy amounts of appliances. Let's say you don't have an Instapot. The only thing you're really cooking on is, what's the word I'm looking for? Your camp stove. So you're using propane for that, or butane or something like that. I have no doubt that this Jackery would have run all of that just fine. But I do have some high power pull things that I use on occasion. I don't use them all the time. And one of them is a cooking device. So let's have the Jackery do all of that, and let's see how long it lasts and how low it gets, really pushing it with these kinds of devices. Now I'm not going to give you numbers of how long it ran something, except for saying that it ran the fridge for 2 days with me using it for all my additional charging. But honestly, I think I could have used the 5. Like I said, I started at 75% and I got down to about 54%, I think. So I think a 500 Jackery, because there is a Jackery 500, would have done the job as easily as the 1000. I think the 240 would have been too small. And there's also a new 300 that I haven't gotten to test. I'm not sure about that one and how well that would have handled it. 300 might have been just on the line where I still actually could have ran my fridge. But I have a very efficient compressor Dometic fridge. I don't know how well it would have ran my old fridge, because I feel like that one didn't do as well with maintaining temp. It was fine for me and for how I was using it. And like I said, I'm a low power user. I don't have a bunch of extra things that need power. I don't use an induction cooker on purpose. I don't use a lot of electric cooking on purpose. In fact, I got rid of my Road Pro lunchbox mostly because I didn't use it enough, and it took so much power to run the thing, and cooking and heat on 12 volt in my experience is really, really slow. And so ultimately it wasn't worth it when I was I could just pop out the stove. And I didn't do enough cooking while traveling. I know that was a big thing. One time I heated up something while I was driving, and so that Road Pro was really cool because I could plug it in. This is getting off the subject of the Jackery, but I'm going to finish the story. So I plugged it in and I drove, and I had something heating up in the Road Pro lunchbox, and I had a hot meal when I got there, but literally I only used it once after months and months of owning it. And I was it didn't take that long. It wouldn't have taken that long to heat it up on the stove and not try to use this electric power source. So for me personally, I got rid of it. I think for truckers, it's great because they do a lot of long driving, and to be able to set something to heat up while you're working, and then once you reach your rest stop, your food's already ready. You don't need to spend money in a truck stop food place. You can fix something healthier probably, which usually if you have to prepare it yourself in some way, it's usually healthier. I think it'd be really useful for them. Which just circles back into most of the electric cooking things I've tried. At the end of the day, I always go back to I mostly use my camp stove anyway. But I do have one thing that I want to test that might have a high enough power pull that it really test the Jackery out a little bit. I have my batteries for my tools. I don't think I have an empty battery. I probably have a battery. Probably one in my vacuum is a little bit lower, so we're going to try charging that up. In fact, we're going to try to get all of our Ryobi batteries charged. I have 3. I don't know what their state of charge is. I think one of them might already be full. We're going to charge those. And I'm just going to try to think, what else do I have that's really high power? And if I run all those through the Jackery and get them fully charged, how much power do I have left after being at 100%? So that's the experiments we're going to do today. All right, so yesterday, because it got really late and the ground was wet from raining, I did not do my full ab exercise routine. So one of the big things we're going to charge off of the Jackery, just to start out, is my exercise ball. So that means I have to plug in my 12-volt compressor to the Jackery, which is really cool to be able to do that away from the van. And I'm going to plug in the exercise ball. Well, I'm not going to plug in the exercise ball. I'm going to inflate the exercise ball with 12-volt air compressor running off the Jackery. We're going to see what that does. Started raining again. The exercise ball is all blown up and plugged, and over here we have our 12-volt air compressor, which is no longer hooked up, and that 1 watt that you see on the Jackery is really just powering its own screen. It should, yeah, it's just because the DC power is on. AC, yep. So whoa, what was that surge? But I'm down to 99% inflating my exercise ball with this air compressor, which was pulling about 30 to 35 watts the entire time. I think it was more like 32 to 35. Uh-oh, is something getting in my tent? That's not good. I just saw water run down the front of the Jackery. The Jackery is definitely not waterproof, so we're gonna protect it a little bit in a second, but I just want to finish what I'm saying. So basically, exercise ball is inflated. We're at 99%, and we had this guy pulling 35 watts at the most while it was going, and we still have plenty of Jackery power left for other applications. It's really windy today, guys. So I was going to deal with charging my drone, which is in this case, but honestly, it's so windy. I don't even think I'm going to take the drone out today because it's just too windy. And so, like, it would just steal my drone, and I'm not getting my drone stolen by the wind. So I do have my Ryobi vacuum, which uses the same batteries as my Ryobi tools. I love this thing. I had the bigger vacuum. If you look at my past videos, you'll see I have a very large Ryobi vacuum. And what's funny is I even had that thing in the car. But this is a much better size. It's easier to store. I remember when Chrome was talking about getting a Ryobi vacuum, I was like, yeah, he should get one. And I thought, like, the only one available was the one my size. And then I saw him with one this size. And I was like, wait! And so I got rid of my big one and got this one instead, and I've been very happy with storing this because, oh my god, in the car and the minivan, like, that just took up so much space, and this solved that problem. So I know this is a Jackery thing, but Ryobi mini vacuum, link will be in the description. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3 batteries and 1 charger. We're gonna throw this on the Jackery right now, and then we're gonna be using another device in conjunction with this. So we already used DC power to blow up my exercise ball with the 12-volt air compressor. So people ask me about the Jackery jumping your car. What it can do if you have a 12-volt air compressor is run your air compressor. Now, you wouldn't need one as big as the 1000, and that's honestly something I'm going to preach for most of this video. Like, you probably don't need the 1000-watt one. There's also a 500, and a 240, and a 300, which I think is the newest one. And there's a 160, but it's hard to find now. It's like almost like they're phasing it out. It's really hard to find. But anyway, third battery. This one's the one that's been on the charger, charging off the inverter. So it's probably full. I haven't checked it, to be honest. Okay, so we're going to turn on the AC power on the Jackery. Sorry, I can't bring you close up right now. And then we're going to plug this in. Now, let's plug it over here so we have the rest of the table space. And so I think this one is the one I took. No, it's not. I think this one is the one. I should really number these so I actually know what's going on. We're going to throw this one on the Jackery. Alright, now mind you, I do have a little Bluetooth speaker charging off the Jackery right now. And now I have my Ryobi battery charging off the Jackery. You can see it flashing. Yeah. Just means power on. So flashing means that it's charging and it will get solid when it's charged. We're going to try to charge all of these batteries before the end of the day. But honestly, what is it supposed to pull? Let me see. This is supposed to pull about 50 watts. And the Jackery seems to be dancing a little bit. Let's see if it settles at any... Nope, it's dancing. So it is charging the battery. So we only have one battery charging right now. I'm pretty sure it wasn't fully depleted. It was at least like partially depleted. So I'm just gonna experiment right here for a second, see if any of these are fully charged. Okay, so this one is in fact fully charged, so we'll put that one on the vacuum. And there's something wrong with this battery, because this one was acting stupid, so I'm wondering if there's something wrong with it. But anyway, this battery is now plugged in and we're jumping between 47 and 53 watts on the Jackery, charging that. Now before I give you guys a good decent close-up of the screen, I want to introduce this baby. Now I got this a while ago. I always like, especially with things I buy with my own money, from what I hear, usually when a company sends you something, they want to see a quick turnaround in a video. But when I buy things on my own, I like to use them a while before I really give like 100% review on it. And even though I did not buy this Jackery, probably in a few months I will do an update on how I feel about it. I mean, like right now it's performing great. It's like great outside power. It's great power to have in addition to my van. I didn't love having it hooked up to the refrigerator because it meant that it had to stay in the van. And since I already have a power system in the van, it was more inconvenient to try to run the fridge off the Jackery than not. But it's also good to know that if I have this charged up in my van and for some reason like something goes kaflooey with my solar, it stops working, a cord gets ripped, there's a repair that I need to make that's going to take some time, I can throw the fridge on the Jackery and keep the fridge running. So that's good to know. I kind of already knew that, but for the I make videos to make money on YouTube. So it's useful to actually test those things out. And even though it's not a realistic situation, it was semi-unrealistic. But today, this is the kind of stuff I would use it for in a campsite setup or as additional power. And it's good to know like how much it can handle. And if I had it up at 100%, like how much would I actually lose doing just stuff I do on a daily basis? Which brings us back to this. So what the heck is this? It just looks like a pretty blue pot, but it actually runs off of electricity. Now, when I was in the minivan, I got this because I got sick of having to pull out my whole stove, just to cook. And I tried a whole bunch of other solutions, and this one has actually been the most successful. So in the last couple months in the minivan, I was using this to heat up water real quick. I was using it to heat up, like if I just wanted to do like a can of soup real quick, or anything that needed to be heated up but didn't need a lot of flim flam and flu fly to do it. Are those even words, flim flam and flu fly? I would just get this thing, and it has a lid, and then it has a power cable. It also has 2 settings. Also, this thing comes in assorted colors. Link will be in the description. But anyway, so let me see. Can you guys see that? You can see there's a 150 watt setting and a 600 watt setting. Now, in the minivan, I only had a 400 watt inverter for the longest time. And so I could only put it on the 157 setting. I could never put it on the 600 setting and warm anything up, because it would have killed the inverter, possibly blown the power system. I don't know what would have happened. I never tried it. So before now, I always only ran it on the 150. Now, when I got this van, it had a 1,000 watt inverter in it already, and so I was able to use the 600 watt setting to heat up things a little bit faster. In the instructions, they have different rules. In fact, they tell you that 150 won't boil water. It will, and it honestly didn't take that long. And also, I know these settings are wrong, because when I was using it on the 150 watt setting with my rock pals, the display showed that it was more than 150 watts. It was closer to the 200 range. So I don't trust these numbers. I'm going to add something to these numbers. So 600 is pushing a lot on a 1,000 watt inverter, but obviously on the inverter that I have in the van, I don't have a reading on what this is actually doing. I just know I plugged it in and it worked. And it's supposed to, because it's only supposed to be 600 watts, but I really doubt that it is. So we're going to heat up some water. I do have a use for this water. And just see, how the Jackery handles charging some batteries for my Ryobi tools while heating up some water. And this should really push it a little bit. Also, nothing has really depleted this thing. Like, it ran a fridge for 2 days and only got from 75 down to 50. And that's it with all the additional charging. Now, I didn't use this, I didn't inflate a bowl, and I didn't charge Ryobi batteries. The Ryobi batteries are pulling like 50 watts. And the question is, like, how much power will I have by the time this is full? And I'm just going to let it run for as long as I can to see how long it takes to charge this battery. And we're going to heat up some water in this, which should create a huge power pull. And we'll see how well it handles this. But I gotta go get some water first, so you guys just hang on. So another good thing about this extra water jug is I can just bring water out to the table without having to get it from the sink. Ooh, you're open, I guess. Yeah, you're open. All right, so let's fill up this pot with some water. Let me show you what I'm doing here. There we go. I got all my exercise stuff out under here I need to put away since I'm leaving here tonight. Okay, bro, this is taking too long. It's almost empty anyway. We're just gonna do this stuff. Getaway. Alright, excellent. Over. All right, we got water in there. I'm really curious about what this is actually pulling on the 600 watt setting, so we're about to find out. Off. All right, everything is set up. Let's go ahead from off. And now we're on the 150 watt setting. And this is with it still charging the Ryobi battery. And you probably can't see the display, but it's dancing between 319 and like 338. I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to unplug the battery charger and see what we're getting with just the pot. And with just the pot, it's reading 240. It's almost hitting 300 at times. And like I said, that's with this pot on the 150 watt setting. That's why I said I don't actually trust that. I did run this on a 400 watt inverter. So, and the Jackery is making noise like it's actually working for this one. So before I plug this guy back in, the battery back in, I'm going to go ahead and up it to the 600 watt setting. All right, so now we are pulling 559 watts, which is interesting because that means the 150 watt setting runs high and the 600 watt setting is actually running low. So it actually does not go over 600 watts, but given some time, we'll see what it does. We're going to add the battery charger back in. All right, so now we have the Jackery pulling just over 600 watts, actually. All right, we're going to let this water heat up because, yes, I could do that whole thing where I see how long it runs on 600 watts, but the question is, you know, can I have hot water at the level that I want it and still be charging something like my battery charger? So we'll see. So I don't know if you can tell, but the water is a-boiling. So we're going to go ahead and turn this off, which will bring the Jackery from like 600 back down to like 50 some watts. And we went from about, in 20 minutes, pulling a little bit over 600 watts, we went down from about 90 some percent to 81%. So this is the biggest bite I've taken out of the Jackery 1000's power, and there's still plenty of power left. Now, if you have this permanently hooked to a system, more than likely you'll be able to top off that 20% pretty easily. If you're keeping this as a backup power source where you're just going to let it drain, take it back to your house or somewhere, and then pull it back up again, you haven't used much power. Like, this thing could just sit in my van for a while and do this whole thing again and still have plenty of power left. So it did a really good job handling this Denzin pot. If you guys want me to do a more thorough review on this pot right here, I will, but otherwise links will be in the description. Like I said, this is the closest I've gotten to an appliance I've been happy to have in a van, and I used it a lot in the minivan just so I wouldn't have to pull out the whole stove setup. So if you're just heating up like a can of soup or something like that, or something that's already prepared that just needs some heat, this can get you a long way. I really do like it. But let's move on. After running my camp shower and getting some water run through this hair, which I was so desperate to do, I'm only at 80%. I haven't even hardly tapped this thing. So yeah, like it's I mean, there's nothing else to say except this thing is like a beast. But I'm gonna go take off this bathing suit and put on some actual clothes and sort of clean up sort of the remnants of my shower. So there's another thing run that I would use in a day. So I moved the Jackery to the small table because I am in the process of actually consolidating things so I can pack up the campsite. So this is full. As we can see, we have a steady green light. So we're gonna hook up this battery and see if we can actually get that battery full before we leave. Okay, so the night is wrapping up. We have both of these batteries charged. Right now I have my little action cam charging, and it's probably charged by now. And then I also have a cord going to my little laptop device over here. And we are only at 77% after all the things we did with this Jackery today. So since it's getting late, the sun's going down, and I'm leaving the campsite tomorrow, we're going to put all this stuff away, get everything in the van, and then in the morning we'll do a little wrap up. Alright, so here we are back here many days later, and I've had this Jackery 1000 for, a little bit now. I really did not expect to use this as much as I have used it. Like, I use it all the time. I remember when I initially unboxed it, I talked about how big it was, and like, I wouldn't be lugging this around to like picnic tables and stuff, and I have multiple times grabbed this and thrown it on a table at, a park or a rest stop. In fact, I'm at a rest stop right now, and I used it as power while I was exercising. So I was a liar. I do tend to pick this up a lot, and honestly, for the fact that this is a 1,000-watt power station, which is on the high end of power stations. I mean, there's bigger ones out there, but for all enclosed, all-in-one power stations, this is in, sort of that high category where the fan just started back up because I have a bunch of stuff charging in it right now. This is in the end of somebody might buy this to power their whole van, and so for me, this is where I consider it. Man, they decided to start cleaning right now while I'm doing this review. I'm going to turn off the power for a second just so I can talk and sort of reduce some of the noise. There's a guy walking past with a blower right now. So I'm going to let him come on past, and we're going to just see how long it takes for him to like stop making noise. All right, so he's going. I mean, he's doing his job. I can't criticize him. Like, he's doing his job and making his money. Okay, so let's get back into this. So like I said, I've been using this power station way more than I thought I would. What I love actually about it is, like, despite the fact it's sort of a powerhouse station, like it's the 1,000-watt station, it still is easier to put power where I want it, when I want it, with this station. My inverter is all the way in the back of my van, and I've run an extension cord to the front, but I have to be tethered when I'm using that. And the good thing about this Jackery, and you can get a much smaller one than the 1,000 and have this convenience, is that even the 1,000-watt station, it's really easy for me, for like its size, it's really light, and it's really easy for me. Like right now it's sitting in front of my stove. Well, if I want to keep charging things, I'll honestly just throw this in the front seat. I'm not driving right now, keep everything plugged in and charging, and then let it sit in the front seat while I'm using the countertop for other things. This is really easy to move around, much easier than I ever expected it to be, and that makes me really, really happy. So let's get back to charging things. It just got really loud, so I didn't want to talk over top of it. But right now it's at 60%. I'm charging my little action camera. It's not a GoPro because the newest GoPro, or even like a couple generations ago, $400? This was less than $100. I have this going to my cell phone, so my cell phone's charging. I have a drone battery charging right here. Red means it's not charged yet. It turns green when it's done. And then I also have my laptop charger in here. That's what this is. So I have all that stuff charging all at once. I still have a 12-volt port available. I still have two USB-C ports available, and I have an extra plug available. And another frustrating thing about my inverter back there is that I only have one plug. So in order to use multiple things that need 110 regular plugs, I have to either like multi-port it with an extension cord, and then like break it up with like a multi-plug or something, or I just only have one and it's back in that corner. And the good thing about this Jackery is I can literally have power anywhere in this van that's more convenient, that isn't running directly off of an inconvenient placement of the inverter. Honestly, I don't charge it most of the time off of the solar panels. The solar panels are a pain to pull out. They're big, they're bulky. Half the time on the road when I'm just driving and stopping, driving and stopping, driving and stopping, I don't feel like pulling out those panels and dealing with it. And because none of the stuff that I'm charging on this is really, really high power, like it's not pulling a lot of power, it's not gonna kill the power station. I could not charge this thing for like 2 or 3 days for my normal uses, not having the fridge hooked up to it. That was a special situation for specifically just testing this out, because the fridge is just staying plugged into my house system. I'm not gonna like be unplugging it to run it. But under normal situations, with this as an extra power source, like even if I had the 500, it would do what I'm basically doing with this 1,000-watt station. Because like I don't charge it for several days, but when I need that mobile power that I can stick anywhere, I do it. But I'm not pulling out those solar panels. They're, like I said, they're big, they're bulky, they're kind of a pain to set up, and it's much easier, as long as I'm at the hottest point in the day, to plug this into the inverter and charge this off the inverter in the van. And I would honestly say the best way to charge this thing is off of house power. Now, if you live in a van, you have to redefine what that house power is. Now, if you have a day job and you're living in a van and the fan's going again, so I'm just going to turn this off until I do this video. If you're in, if you're living in a van and you have a day job, which was the first 2 years of my van life, I was just living in the city in a van, and I had, day jobs, plural. Then you can just take this into your work and charge it up as much as you can. If you don't get to 100%, unless you're running a heck of a lot of power at night, you're not going to run out of power. If you get 80%, it's okay. There's a lot of people who want to get up to 100% and then like don't want to try to even charge it again until they get down to like, an empty power station. I just don't think like that's the most effective way to have power as much as possible. Now, you might say one of the big criticisms of the Jackery over other power stations in its class is that the 500 cycles thing. Okay, so what does that 500 cycles really mean? It means after 500 cycles, you're going to be down to 85% efficiency, or at least that's around the point where it shouldn't surprise you if you drop down to 85% efficiency. It doesn't mean the power station stopped working. And honestly, people who have the 240, like the original run of the 240, which I can't remember what year that came out, it was a couple years ago, have yet to have issues with those stations not performing as well as they did on day one. I've not yet heard a complaint about a Jackery product stopping performing. I have never, for some reason people think I bought a Jackery power station before this. This is my first Jackery. This Jackery 1000 is my very first Jackery. I have owned other power stations that I bought because I was trying to be cheap. And here's the thing, when I first moved into my car and then later on into my minivan, I was trying to parse out money for everything. And try to figure out how to have a little bit of everything. And to have a little bit of everything, that meant I cheaped out on certain things so that I could spend more on other things that, looking back, I don't think were more important. For example, I bought a really, really, really cheap, I think it was around 200 watt power station. If I can find one of the clones, I think right now it's being branded Aim Tom, but it was called like We Power or something like that when I bought it several years ago, and that thing crapped out on me. I bought cheap little 50 watt panels that were a waste of money. I wasted money on things that weren't efficient. The Jackery panel is expensive. It's gonna last longer than that little piece of crap panel I bought and my little cheap power station. That's the thing. So you are investing in something that is going to have long-lasting effects. Like I said, people who bought the first run of the Jackery 240 are not complaining. This company's been around, hasn't been around like a long time, but it's been around for a couple of years. And everybody who owns the Jackery loves the Jackery, and that's something sort of you can count on. Now the frustration for me and a lot of other people is we'd rather be able to hook our Jackeries to cheaper panels, static panels, attached panels. There's a lot of people who just don't want to deal with soft-sided folded case panels, even beyond the price point. Like for me, it's not even it is about the price, but it's not about the price. But at the end of the day, as a person who does a lot of get up and go, as a person who lived in a van for 2 years, sort of in a city situation, the panels are just more of a pain to deal with for charging the station. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't take that panel, just the panel, out to a picnic park situation and like plug my phone into it. I would. But if I hadn't got it for free, would I have bought it? Probably not. Would I buy a Jackery power station? Yes. Like I would have no hesitation in my life right now spending money on the 300. Like if I was like looking at Jackeries right now, I personally would buy the 300, not the 1000. One of the reasons is the new Jackery 300 has the MPPT charging, so it's competitive with this as far as like charging a little bit faster than some of the Jackeries in the past. But you know, I have this awesome 1000, so I use this like all the time because this is the power station I have. But even this 1000, as big as it is, I can't emphasize it enough, is very, very portable. And it's more portable than I gave it credit for out the box. So let me try to cover some of the things that people have asked me about since I initially did my Jackery unboxing. And one of those things is the warranty. So here's their little warranty card. And basically you get, I believe, you get a 24-month limited warranty. I don't know what that means, but that's what it says on here. And it also says lifetime technical support. So if anything's not good with this Jackery, they do offer lifetime technical support. Every Jackery comes with this little card that I just dropped that's shaped like a Jackery. Isn't that cute? But on top of that, if you register your Jackery after you get it, you can get an extra 12 months warranty. So they're willing to give you 3 years of a warranty on this thing. And that's a lot, to be quite honest. So if you purchase this, signed up for your extra 12 months, and there you go. That's 3 years of protection on this, 24 out the box, and then an extra 12 when you register your device, which I think is pretty decent, especially for a device I've heard no complaints about. Like except for it charges too slow, and sort of sometimes price is hard when you're poor. I haven't heard a lot of complaints about Jackery, so kill that right there. Charge time. So I did not go to 0 and charge back up to 100 at any point since I've owned this thing. And I haven't needed to, despite the things I've ran on it. I've charged drone batteries without plugging this in for days at a time. I've charged drone batteries. I had my fridge running on it for a couple of days with a terrible solar situation. And that's the thing, like if you want to run your fridge off of it, it can't go off really or you don't want it off for too long. So you definitely don't want to be like waiting hours and hours and hours to get it charged back up if you drain it to run, you know, a fridge. Another thing I want to say about charging or running things off of the Jackery or any type of solar battery. You have three types of charge situations. You have something like a cell phone or a laptop like that, where you're going to charge the device up, the device is going to get to 100%, and then you're going to use it for a while on its own electricity, free of being plugged into this device. So you got that kind of situation. Then you have, it's not plugged up here, but let me see if I can grab it real quick. It should be down here. What do I do with it? I don't know. But then you have a situation like your fridge. So your fridge doesn't charge up, doesn't have its own power supply. If it's hooked into something like the Jackery, it's going to be want to be on that Jackery 100% of the time that you're, you know, out in the woods or the forest. Like, it can't operate without power being supplied to it. There's no point where you can unplug it and then it's just like operating free of power. That's a constant charge. So when you're doing the math for your brand of fridge, you have to remember that you're talking about a constant charge. Just because a station will power that fridge on, it doesn't mean that it's going to keep it running for the amount of time that you want it to run. Rather, that's for a trip, which is a much simpler situation, or to live in your van full time. And that's sort of the debate you're going to have to be in, because you're going to have, if you're trying to run a fridge on this, you want to know every opportunity you have to put power into this, you're going to need to take advantage of. Whereas if you're using it for things that you're only using briefly over short periods of time, then it's okay to run this down like really, really low. But if you have like a supply of food in your fridge, you don't want your power station to like ever not have power. So yeah. So the other one, I can't find my blender for some reason. I don't know what I did with it. So your other type of situation would be something like my blender. And so for the blender, or like a TV, or if you have a desktop computer in your van, and I have seen desktop and not laptop computers in the van, then if you're in that type of situation, then you're going to need a surge of power or even a microwave. Everybody wants their stupid microwaves. I've been very happy without a microwave for the last 3 years, and even when I had it briefly, when I had my temporary work housing back in Oregon, it was fine, but it's not something I need. It's definitely a want. I can live without having a microwave. But if you're using something like that, then you're talking about a surge of power for a specific amount of time, long enough to do whatever function you want. This is also the case with slow cookers and Instapots and things like that. Like you might need a surge of power for a specific amount of time, and what you want to make sure is, one, your device can handle that initial surge of power, and two, that it can handle it for the amount of time that you need to do your thing. And without doing your specific device to a specific situation, it's hard for any reviewer to speak to how long something can do something for you. So you really need to educate yourself on sort of wattage math, for lack of a better term. You're going to have to start looking at boxes. When you buy any sort of appliance for your van, if you do become the person who buys a lot of appliances for their van, you're going to have to really look at wattages. And then you're going to have to assess those wattages against your power system, whether that's a Jackery or a self-built system. One good thing to invest in if you're still in a house and you're still trying to assess what you want to put in your van is a watt meter. Because if you don't have that information readily available, you can get a lot of information by buying yourself a watt meter. I didn't even know what that was when I first moved into a van. And that's the thing about living in a van. It'll teach you a lot. You'll have to learn a lot about electricity, because this really becomes a question of, do I want to invest a lot of time in pulling that much power? And there are people happily using like slow cookers and Instapots and all kinds of appliances in their van. I have happily been able to do a lot of that stuff because appliances seem to come with kitchens without ever buying that stuff. But you're probably like, Dawn, you said you were going to talk about charge time. And again, I'm going to talk about what Jackery says. And basically it says that it could run a car fridge up to 60 watts. They make that specification around 66 hours. That is several days. It says it can do about 20 recharges of a drone battery before it wouldn't be able to do that. It says your standard 12-inch laptop, it could charge around 12 times. And again, this is just individual devices, not charging all of them together. So like, if you're running a fridge for like 48 hours and you've also used a bunch of power for other stuff, that's going to take away from some of these times. These are times that are independent. It could run, if you have a TV in your van, it says it could run the TV around 14 hours. If you have a smartphone, it can do about 100 recharges. And a motion camera, it says it can do about 180 recharges. It'll turn off automatically if there's a power draw under 10 watts for power saving over a course of 12 hours. So if 12 hours go by without any power being drawn that's over 10 watts on the device, it'll just cut itself off. All right. Now, as far as like charging it, it claims, and I think this is dumb, that there are 4 ways to charge it, but they really only show 3. So, yeah. And why do I say they only show 3? Because charging from an electric generator is the same thing as a wall charging. It's also the same thing as charging off an inverter, as long as you have like a constant power source. So it's gonna take about the same amount of time, because as far as the Jackery is concerned, a gas powered generator and your inverter and your house outlet are all the same, because for it just means that it's charging from its AC power bank right here. And this just knows I am plugged in, I am not. It doesn't really care if it's a generator, a car inverter, or your wall outlet in your house. It will only change when the amount of power being supplied to it from its plug goes down, and then it won't supply as much for the Jackery. Okay? So those two things are the same thing, and like somebody really thinks people are dumb, so they feel like they need to separate those two things. It says if the display shows less than 20% capacity, plug it into a power source. A wall charge takes around 7.5 hours. So it says it takes about almost 8 hours to charge this from 0. If it is charging from the car, which is the little 12-volt plug, it says it takes around 14 hours. And in fact, I get half the charge charging directly from the car on 12 volt than I do charging from the wall outlet. And then for 100-watt solar panels, it says 17 hours. And we all know the problem with solar panels. First of all, there aren't 17 hours of good sun in a day. It just doesn't happen. So that is a charging method that is 100% dependent on the sun. And I had all kinds of situations when I was testing this out at the campsite with the solar panels. Now, what I do like about this, again, it's so much power, even if you don't start at 100%, unless you're like running crazy amounts of appliances off this thing on a campsite, this is going to last you a long time. I went through 2 days with terrible sun and never ached for power out of this thing. It still ran super efficiently, charged everything I needed it to charge. So unless like you're taking an actual house with you, which I feel like people in a van have less than like say people in an RV. I think people in an RV have this expectation, much higher appliance expectations than van people in general. That doesn't mean it's universal. But I think for general use, for most people camping or in a van or in some simple power situations, even if you don't get perfect sun for a couple of days and you do have the Jackery panels, you're going to have enough power. Like, you are not going to be aching for power unless you are doing like some crazy type stuff. I think even two people, let's say two people and a kid, let's say both parents have a laptop, they have a car fridge, the kid has like a tablet or a Chromebook or something, and everybody has a phone. And let's say you go on a weekend excursion. I think even if you just charge this up before you leave home, you'd probably have enough power to get through that weekend. So that's how I feel about that as far as like charging time. It takes a while to charge. You are not going to take those solar panels. Let's say you're an urban camper like me. You're not going to take those solar panels, this Jackery, hang out in the park all day, sit this in the sun in some way, place you can see it, and then have a fully charged power station to go home to. But even if you have a partially charged power station, you're probably going to get through the night just fine. The solar panels, however, are not the most efficient way to charge this, especially not if you're relying on like it being outside. Now, if you were able to get an adapter to hook this to your roof system, much like your house battery, which shouldn't be going down to 0 every day, then this, it'll just keep running. When the sun goes up, it'll take as much charge as it can. When the sun goes down, it'll, stop charging as much. Now, I did try to use both these ports at the same time. I don't know if anybody else have done this test for charging, and it was not successful. In fact, I got like no charge when I tried to plug an input into the 8mm port and the Anderson port. It just didn't work. I also tried taking the double connector and plugging in like the car charger and a solar panel to see what would happen. Again, it didn't seem to work. I don't know if anybody else has done that test. So I was not able to use both of the input ports at the same time. If anybody was thinking, well, then like, what if I have it like hooked up to my car and then hooked up to solar by the Anderson? Like, will it, just charge from whatever's available? For me, it didn't work. Tried it. Okay, so we've talked about the warranty. We've talked about charge time. As far as it being an investment for full-time use, again, going back to Dawn, back in her minivan days, back in her car days, I really wish I bought something like the Jackery way back then. Even if it was just a 240, I think it actually would have lasted me until I was able to build my own house system. And if you're going to get to the point where you have like a really powerful system that's flexible, that you can add whatever you want to, but you need to start out really simple, this is going to get you started, and it's going to last. And if you sign up for that extra 12 months of warranty, if anything goes wrong in those 3 years, that's not you running over this with a car or throwing it out of a window, then you have Jackery warranty coverage. And what I got was cheap to get me by. It had no warranty coverage, and I think it barely lasted a year. And then after that, I got the Max Oak Bluetti, the 200-watt version, and I love that thing. That thing did so great for such a long time. But when I ended up having problems with it, I could not get support from Max Oak Bluetti. Now, from what I hear, they are much better at supporting their larger units, but my 200-watt Max Oak Bluetti, it worked great out of the box. I like the design of it. I like the size of it. I enjoyed it while I had it, but when I needed customer support, they really weren't down for me. So that's that. I don't know that I would ever get a Bluetti power station because of the bad experience I had with the 200-watt station. So we've talked about the panels. So another problem I have with the panels that I didn't bring up, and it's in my notes, is that they are cloth and campsites are dirty. And so they were really hard to keep clean. Like with my roof panels, because everything's kind of metal, I can just take some cleaner, wipe it down real quick, wipe down the corners and edges. I can rinse them off at like the car wash, because I don't have to worry about water getting where I don't want it to get in. That's another thing. The Jackery panels are not waterproof, so I had all these days of rain where I was afraid to have them out too long, and so I was bringing them inside. I had a day of trying to charge it like beneath my windshield, and it just didn't make me happy. That was another problem with the panels. Another thing is, when I had this charging my fridge, I had it in the front seat of the car, because that was the only way I could actually plug the fridge into it. And if you wanted to use this to run your fridge, I assume you'd want it hooked to a semi-constant power source, because you don't want to risk like your fridge turning off. And there wasn't enough cable to have this sitting in my front seat. And mind you, this was not a permanent setup. Have the fridge plugged into it, and then also run those cords out of the window. Like, I had very limited range trying to keep this inside while having my soft panels outside, and that was problematic. The best setup I had for this was then I put it on the outside table underneath my canopy, and I could move it and the panels, have this somewhat protected, and still have the panels out where the sun was. And my least favorite way, of course, of setting this up is just sitting this in the dirt with the panels. Like, that's not great. For that reason, I feel like with the panel setup, this is better for like a small vehicle, like an SUV or minivan or car camping. Do like boondocking and actual like urban, rural, not urban camping. Like, they're on campsites where they can like sit stuff out in the sun all day. And so that was a much better setup for this Jackery than sort of trying to use the panels in a way where this was in the van. The best way to charge this in the van is off of the inverter for the power station. And you would say, well, Dawn, I want to get this and not have a full solar setup. I want this to be my setup. Then I would say, go get yourself a plug-in inverter that you can plug into your cigarette or 12-volt accessory slot, and then make sure it's at least 200, maybe 300 watts, and then plug your Jackery 110 plug into that. And that's the best way to charge it, especially if you're doing an urban camping thing. And you know what? Some nights you may only have a 75% charge. Unless you're running something crazy, that should get you through the night. And it should get you through your downtimes of the day. Now, if you are sitting still a lot of the day and living in the city, out of your van or your car or whatever, and you're thinking about the Jackery, I'm not sure how to solve that for you. Like, if you're not in a place where you can't put panels out and you're not driving that much, I don't know sort of what your options are, except to like go to a public place that has power and plug this in. But obviously during COVID, that's not as much of a thing, because you don't have as many places you can just casually sit around all day. So yeah, maybe the Jackery isn't for you in that situation, or you need to buy an adapter and hook it to some permanently mounted roof panels. So yeah, I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover about the Jackery. I am very happy with it. I'm very happy with its performance. I think for the uses that I used it for, a 500 probably would have got me through the same amount of days, as I've rarely gotten past 50% after a couple of days. And I also think it would be interesting to run this with the fridge attached when it was more hot. I was in a very cool, in fact, it's gotten hotter now. It was a couple of very cool days, especially with all the rain, that I had the fridge running off of the Jackery. So I'm interested to see how well it would stand up to running the fridge, as well as all of my additional charging and everything else I ran off of this, with a hot day where the fridge may be needing more power to stay cool. Like, I wonder how it would hold up underneath those circumstances, but I don't really have the time to set up those circumstances. But otherwise, like, I have nothing else to say. Like, it's far more portable than I gave it credit for out of the box. If you're looking for something in a high wattage class that is portable, You can't do better than the Jackery. Yes, there's the Bluettis and EcoFlows, but from what I can tell, those are a little more bulky and annoying. I haven't personally handled them to actually move around and use, whereas this is actually not. Like, I have grabbed this in addition to all of my other stuff and taken it to a table and use it. And it's done the job. It's done every job I've asked it to do. It's done it well. It's done it with power to spare. And I don't even know what else I can say about this thing except I'm happy with it. If you have any questions about the Jackery or anything I didn't cover, please feel free to throw them in the comments. If need be, I'll do a follow-up video on the Jackery. It depends on what kind of questions they are. Sometimes I find multiple people have the same questions, and if you just answer it in a comment, the other person who has that question hasn't seen it. If it's a small question I can answer really quickly, I'll try to answer it in the comments. But if I don't get to it, I'm noting it, because I think the most valuable thing I can do with this Jackery is find a way to answer your pre-buy questions if you have any. All right, I'll see you in the next video.